and welcome to another episode of Homefront. Today is a special episode actually. It is another episode of Homefront Unplugged because we had such rave reviews with the last two Unplugged episodes that we said we had to listen to the people and do another one. So today is a special one because we have with us Dr. Adesh Sirjusingh. Now he is the Director of Women's Health at the Ministry of Health. So Dr. Sirjusingh, I want to say welcome.
Okay, thank you for having me on the show.
So I was told that when it comes to anything women health related, you are the man to deal with this, especially when it comes to pregnant women. Is that so?
Yeah, actually, so our unit is a devoted unit formed at the Ministry of Health. It's the first time the Ministry of Health has actually had someone coordinating women's health in Trinidad and Tobago to improve the outcomes for our mothers and our newborn babies. And we were formed in the year 2017.
Okay, so before this whole COVID-19 pandemic hit, what was your main focus in that area?
Yeah, so the focus remains the same. Before, during, and post-pandemic will always be to improve the outcomes for mothers and newborn babies. We actually have some targets set for worldwide called the Sustainable Development Goals, which you've heard about for the year 2030. And Trinidad and Tobago, I'm proud to say, even with the pandemic, for the last 4 years consistently, we have actually achieved those targets way ahead of schedule with respect to outcomes for mothers and babies.
Oh, nice. All right, so we're going to dive. This is Unplugged. This is Homefront Unplugged. I'm sure you're familiar with the show, and we're going to hit you the hard-hitting questions. And we know that the entire drive right now is for the whole country to vaccinate. But in your field, we are seeing where it's not recommended for pregnant women or for breastfeeding mothers to be vaccinated. And why is that so?
Right. Well, the biggest questions first, of course, the hardest ones. So really, it's a contentious issue. Well, you know, you've had Professor Montai there before as well, and we talked about the safety in the vaccine, despite how fast it seemed to have been produced. There's a lot of science behind it. So some of very similar types of vaccines have been used in pregnancy in the past, and we think they're quite safe because they're very similar. However, these particular vaccines, and I want to be careful, they have so many vaccines. Do you know there's actually 287 vaccines right now being produced and in different stages? We know of just a few.
Yeah, we only know a few. I mean, we know a few and then we know the popular ones in the US, but so
exactly.
There are over 200 and something vaccines?
Yeah, so, and there are 17 approved already. There are many undergoing trials. So it's going to be really confusing to just lump all the vaccines in one just now. So I always say be cautious. Some vaccines are approved in some parts of the world, some are not. So we are trying to stick to the World Health Organization. And as they approve, we will approve. And they have said you could use it in certain circumstances, some vaccines, especially if you're like a front healthcare worker and if you have a high incidence of COVID in the background population. In very selected cases, they will allow this emergency approval. Remember, it's still at the emergency approval stage, as Professor Montai said. We're still doing the bigger studies, and you know, a month or two from now, we might have different information to say. We have a lot more safety with more studies being published.
So it's more an issue of not enough tests were carried out related to pregnant women, and that's kind of more why you're going to err on the side of caution when it comes to them then.
Very selective. I mean, we have a lot more leeway in the breastfeeding population because, of course, the baby has delivered. But remember, pregnancy is a stage where you have these cells developing, a developing fetus. We want to be absolutely sure before we say, look, all pregnant women could be vaccinated at all stages of pregnancy. We just being a little cautious. We're following the WHO guidelines, and each vaccine is slightly different because, in fact, there are some vaccines that are being more studied in pregnancy now. You know, some of the newer technologies with the mRNA technology, the Pfizer, the Moderna.
Right.
But even WHO hasn't approved it for use in pregnancy, you know, at this point in time.
So I remember when we had Professor Monta here, she was speaking about pro-inflammatory states, and she was speaking about obesity and diabetes being pro-inflammatory. And when it comes to pregnancy, I was hearing that is also pro-inflammatory as well. So does that state now put a pregnant woman more at risk to contract the COVID-19 virus itself, or even get worse in terms of side effects and worse in terms of the severity of the virus itself? Is that true when it comes to pregnant women?
Yeah, 100% correct. Yes, you're right on track there. So early in the pandemic, we didn't have enough studies on how it would affect pregnancy, but now we have so much information that shows that pregnant women are actually considered at much higher risk than the average population for getting very ill, especially for those pregnant women who are overweight, obese ones. The older pregnant women, remember, but these are still young people, I have to be careful with my words here. They're over 35 years of age, young people, but for pregnancy, slightly older. If you have comorbid conditions like these, high blood pressure and diabetes, asthma, and if you're in the last trimester of pregnancy as well, of course, you have this large uterus, breathing might be difficult. And so yes, pregnancy women, they tend to have a worse outcome and end up in the ICU and the HDU, especially if you have those high-risk conditions as well.
Right. And I saw that the CDC in the US, they changed their stance when it came to vaccines and the pregnant woman. But I'm not sure if the WHO changed their stance on it. And what is our stance right here in Trinidad and Tobago?
So as I mentioned before, every country, they have individual approvals, individual systems. You have the FDA, European agencies, UK agencies. We continue to follow what the WHO is saying. Actually, my team and we prepared a document. Actually, I was on some holidays, so I just came back out, and we submitted as soon as I came out to this national technical advisory group. They're actually considering this. In fact, Professor Montai sits on that group as well. They're considering the recommendations we have made. I don't want to go too early and say what we have said. They will be guided by what information the studies have given them. I'm hopeful that at least maybe we can start vaccinating now that we're getting more vaccines. That's also important. You can't give vaccines if there are no vaccines.
Right.
Now that we are hearing more and more vaccines coming, and we have more information, we'll be allowed to increase the number of people being vaccinated. So maybe we can get at least the breastfeeding population. As I said, just separate breastfeeding from pregnancy. Those breastfeeding mothers, at least maybe we can start looking at vaccinating them. Hopefully we'll get that approved.
So if you're a frontline worker, frontline healthcare worker, and you're pregnant, should your employer pull you off of being on the frontline?
Yeah. In fact, I answered this question really early in the when this thing started. So what my department did, we gave recommendations to the regional health authorities to take those pregnant healthcare workers off the front lines. So we actually produced a document, a guideline, which it's really difficult for even practical purposes. The PPE that you have to wear for hours, it's really difficult for a pregnant woman to actually use and to stay in that for so many hours, other as well than the high risk they are running on a day-to-day basis. So yes, the answer is that's the advice.
And if you're a pregnant woman and a diabetic, now how does that categorize you?
Right. Well, of course, we talked about diabetes being a higher risk condition, and for sure, that's a double whammy you hit with there as well. So definitely you're in a much higher risk category.
So would there be an exception for somebody like that, for them to be vaccinated?
No, we still will have the overall approval. We'll make a general approval because you are now adding two risk factors, of course, and there's a better case for that person to be vaccinated. Ideally, really, if we could, when we maybe mention about fertility and those kind of things, those, especially if you're a high-risk person and you're planning a pregnancy, try your best to get vaccinated now.
Before. So that leads me to the other question, Doc, is that, all right, so let's say my girlfriend does a pregnancy test and she comes back and she says she's pregnant. Well, first I will probably get a heart attack, right? But after that, when I recover, Let's say she's pregnant. She just found out that she's pregnant. Is there a cutoff in terms of whether you can get vaccinated from the minute you find out that you're pregnant, or is it 6 months within the pregnancy, 9 months within the pregnancy that you'll advise not to be vaccinated?
Right. So yeah. So basically, the way the approvals work, they would say, of course, there would be people. The scenario would be, you can vaccinate someone. You don't do a pregnancy test, so there are people who are being vaccinated and then find out they're pregnant.
Right.
So we tell them first and foremost, we reassure them, of course, the science is very safe and says that there's no risk to you, but we wouldn't continue with the vaccination if we find out. So we wouldn't go with the second vaccine. We say you'll have to hold on until we are certain about the safety and so. And in addition, in some countries, they actually were vaccinated. They are vaccinating women, UK, United States, and so on, but they are using the mRNA vaccines in particular, and they're doing it in pregnancy. So, depend on the country you are, and depend on what vaccines you have available, you have choices. So it's not one size fits all. Ideally, as I said before, plan that pregnancy, use contraception before, especially if you're unwell, if you're in that high risk category, the overweight, the older woman, diabetes, high blood pressure. If you could try to get vaccinated before you get pregnant, better outcome for your pregnancy.
Well, I know some of the more mature folk, they have different methods that they would use. I remember a long time I used to hear about this Billings method and all these different methods that people would use in terms of planning their pregnancy. So I guess whichever method they decide to choose, is better to plan the pregnancy than for it just to happen.
Better outcomes.
Especially in a time like this now where you have to get vaccinated. So you don't want that to just spring up on you just like that. So come into the other point in terms of, we spoke of the pregnant women, but what about the women with the newborns who are breastfeeding? Is there a cutoff point? When can a breastfeeding woman receive the vaccine? Is it within a month of having the baby, 2 months, 3 months? What's the time limit?
Right. So as I say, for now, we're not allowing breastfeeding women to get the vaccine, but if we allow them, they can continue safely to breastfeed their babies. There's no stopping of breastfeeding. So immediately after you've delivered, we say you can go ahead and get vaccinated. There's no cutoff time.
Right.
You start the vaccination process. If there are different doses, you continue breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is extremely important for the health of that baby, and there's really no transmission of the vaccine in a sense to the baby physically, except for the antibodies that you produce. So in the breast milk.
But that was leading to my next question. Is it that
you're going to give these antibodies to the baby? So you're going to give that added protection, because what happens is babies are unable to manufacture antibodies in the early part of life. So what they have to do is they have to wait till the immune systems develop, and then you start vaccinations when they're 2 months, 3 months of age normally. So in that window, you're actually protecting your baby from getting COVID.
Okay, before they could get their shot, because I know that some of the vaccines are now being tried out on children people under 18. So whether it be children, I know that the 12 to 18 category, they're trying out that, and then they would go younger and younger as they progress.
Yeah, they're right. They actually started from 0 years of age. You're right.
So that's some good news there in terms of that aspect of the trials. But when it comes to the men now, I know that some men are a bit afraid of getting the vaccine. I heard some men even saying that they heard it would lower their sperm count, or it would lower the quality of their sperm. Someone actually said that it may cause impotence. So touch a bit on this for me, for the men who are scared to take the vaccine because they are afraid it affect the boy.
Okay, the vaccine part of it, well, men in general are weaker than women. The women will actually go faster to get the vaccine. I'm sorry to say, but it's not going to affect you in any way. I mean, the vaccine is completely safe. It's not going to affect that. However, COVID can cause problems. There are some studies which show that it may affect the sperm quality and counts in some research, especially in fertility centers where they do a lot of sperm tests. So men who have had COVID, they are seeing some with poor quality sperm. It's early days yet. There's more research, but it's a little worrying.
Well, that alone, gentlemen, should make you want to rush and get your vaccine.
Yes.
So what about the women now, Doc, in terms of their fertility? Is the vaccine going to affect women's fertility? Is getting the vaccine going to prevent you from becoming pregnant? Is it going to reduce the likelihood of you getting pregnant if you get the vaccine?
Right. So, in fact, there was a lot of misinformation and spread through social media on the vaccines, and a lot of things have come upon. And really, it's totally false. I really strongly recommend you get vaccinated, especially if you're planning a pregnancy, as we just discussed.
Okay, okay. So, Doc, a little bit personal with you. So, since this entire thing started, this pandemic hit, how has this affected you personally?
Well, really, it's I would just like everyone else, it's been really difficult for all of the things that we are going through. I would have to honestly say, there are times you get depressed. We can't be outdoors. We can't be doing all the things we like to do. So it's mentally, just like everyone else, and it's important to recognize that our mental health gets affected. Especially I have two kids who are in secondary school. It's really been challenging for them when they have to write exams and having to go into school and laboratory and as well too. So it's really hard on the whole family.
And in terms of you, okay, I know you're big into women's health and you would have dealt with a lot of the women. I'm still trying to understand them. Did you crack the code as yet?
No, that one is actually that one I do have a secret to success.
You didn't crack the code. You didn't crack the code. Well, I'm still looking. So anybody out there, you can help us.
More research, yeah.
So, Doc, we want to thank you very much. Do you have any final words for the population of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, yeah, two things. Number one is, of course, vaccinate. When your turn comes, don't wait and keep waiting and procrastinating. You really have to be socially responsible for your family, for your loved ones, for your communities, for the country. And the last note is really just want to say thanks to all the healthcare workers and all the people who support the healthcare workers, all the people in the background who make us look good. We really want to say thanks to everyone.
Yeah, so we want to say thanks to you and to all of our healthcare workers out there. You all are doing a fine job. Without you all, we would not be in this stage that we are in now, heading out of this pandemic as we chart our way forward. So thank you very much once again, Dr. Sirjusingh, for joining us on the home front. And to everyone out there, as Doc said, we want to drive this point home. Vaccinate. In order for us to be great, we need to vaccinate. So get yourself in order. When the phone rings and your appointment is there and is ready and your vaccine is ready and waiting for you, we need you to go out there and get that shot. Take a shot. Let's deal with this thing. Let's get out of this pandemic together, because I got mine, Doc got his, so we need you at home to get yours when your time reaches. Again, my name is Rome. Thank you very much for joining us here on the home front, and thank you very much to the PED CARES Foundation. We need you all to go. We actually have a GoFundMe page now. So you can go on the GoFundMe page and donate. You can go on the PED CARES Foundation website and keep sending those donations. We definitely appreciate every one of you who have donated so far. And to those of you who are now going to start donating, thank you very much. Welcome to our home front PED CARES Foundation GoFundMe page, right? My name is Rome. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you again to the PED CARES Foundation. I must say, thanks for my fancy bracelet from the PED CARES Foundation as well. Catch you guys right here on TV6 tomorrow.